proud dad, that's for sure.
Oh, I know you are, both of them. How long will it take her to become an Eagle Scout?
Well, Michael's been working on it for 3 years, and he's been working, he'll have his Eagle before he turns 14.
Good grief, that is young.
Yes, and she's 11, so if she stays on kind of the same track, she'll be, 14 or 15, or maybe 13 when she gets hers. Who knows? She's a little bit behind as far as Eagle merit badges because
She just got in.
She just got in, so she might be a year or two later before she gets hers.
I think that's so, go for it.
Now she's already started working on the merit badges, but they're not Eagle required. She's got 5 already since she started in February. Come on,
You use my up here.
we're not starting yet. We're just talking. We're about to get started.
Hello, everybody.
The one we know, they don't get them until everybody graduates from high school.
It's all-
AG.
I've been busy all day. Can't even get out of these clothes. How are you? I'm good. How are you?
Got about 3 more minutes.
Work out test. I didn't even bring a pen. I'm bad, Tim. It's not a big deal.
Everyone's afraid of the
I'm just gonna make
process.
it up the mountain to my house so I can change it without.
We can make some bigger.
Off the
kind of
mountain.
thing there.
Some days are just too busy.
And how do I get out?
So, because let me just,
No, they ain't, that's start time.
I'm gonna move it.
Oh, is everybody moving down?
No, I'll just stay where I am.
I'm not sure that you wrote. I suggest cancel, not attempt to regulate a vehicle licensed by the state to operate on roads with speed limits less than 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, but that's a low-speed electric vehicle. It's not a golf cart. And they're licensable in North Carolina.
Well, I know they are. Actually, when I talked to the man that sells golf carts, he said a low-speed vehicle is the same as a golf cart.
Well, not always.
But it doesn't say that not attempt to regulate a vehicle license by the state.
Yeah, if
But
it has a
doesn't
state
say
tag.
low speed, it doesn't say only golf carts.
Any vehicle that's licensed by the state, the council should regulate.
They can.
I know they can, but they shouldn't.
Why?
Well, why would they spot? Why would they spot regulate vehicles that are licensable? That's my point.
Because of the safety features in them.
Well, all the
safety.
safety,
Public road.
for a low-speed electric golf cart, you have to have.
We're almost
fixed
ready.
windshield,
We've got about
seat
1 more
belts.
minute. We can get
No,
started.
golf carts, you have to have nothing.
Right.
No,
So
absolutely.
you're not understanding. What I'm suggesting is that they only address golf carts.
But you don't say that in here. I see, but it's not. Just pointed out for the low-speed vehicles only. There is a difference. But the man that sells golf carts, he said, low-speed vehicle is a golf cart, but it has to have.
But he's wrong. He's wrong.
He said they have to have horn, they have to have brake lights, they have to have turn signals, they have to have seat belts.
Windshield wiper.
I can see that.
So that, because the
And
wind
who
pulls
wants
the
to
doors, so they have magnets on it to hold
If we
it.
don't have.
There's people that own them up here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if I might get everyone's attention, we will have a chairperson after this, so we'll go ahead and get started. It is 2 o'clock. This is the first meeting of the golf cart committee that everybody is ready to serve on, and we appreciate everyone that's here. And Dr. Joe Berg is on the line. So we'll begin by introducing ourselves. And Ms. Harriet, would you like to start?
I'm Harriet Chamberlain.
You want to say anything about yourself, or?
I've been living up here for 35 years.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Harriet.
I'm Brian Barnes, Beach Mountain Club. Been a resident on and off for 19 years of Beach Mountain.
Thank you very much. Dr. Berg, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
I've been a resident of Beach Mountain for about 5 years now.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Linda Strom. I've been here 3 years.
Thank you.
Carol Beckman, I have been a summer resident for about 31 years and a full-time resident on and off since 2005.
Thank you. And
And I'm Stacy Eggers the fourth. Everyone knows me as Four, which is the nickname that I go by. I'm the town attorney.
thank you. Tim Holloman, town manager, and also we have Riley Hatch back there, special project coordinator and AV extraordinary operator. Preston Yates is our planner, and Tim Barnett's our police chief. So Tim, you want to say anything? Okay. Before we get started, there is one thing. This is an ad hoc committee, but for the next time, someone actually call a meeting to order. I guess, can we take nominations for chairman of this committee?
I'll nominate Carol.
So we have Carol and Brian. Okay, a nomination, motion, or a motion nominating be closed. Nominations be closed, everybody. Good. All right.
Well, who's gonna be it?
All right.
We gonna
Well, we're gonna take,
a vote?
take one at a time. The first one was for Carol, so all in favor of Carol being chairperson?
Aye.
Joe?
That's fine with me.
You don't even know me.
Okay, I take it by the votes. That's 3 votes there, so Carol will be the
Yeah.
chairperson.
Getting the big girl chair.
This outfit, I get to move. You know that.
I'll take your seat.
And the main role of the chairperson will be
Fine. Are you moving that way?
I have to for my.
just to call the meeting to order, kind of see that we move along. Today, we try to finish up at 2:50, and then once this group makes a recommendation to the council, Carol will be the distinguished person who gives that to council. So you'll have plenty of support, don't worry.
Just get it, I did. You do it.
All right. I think that's all the business we have at this time, other than go ahead and get started. Our attorney is here, and Tim Barnett is our police chief. Up on the map, I have the roads that are already allowed for, golf carts travel to and from the club. You've got a really small version. We try to have bigger versions later. The main reason was that I can't show everything at one time on the screen, but I'll ask Chief Barnett to come up at this time and give a little bit of background and introduction on the golf cart UTV.
Good afternoon, folks.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for willing to be part of this committee. I've been asked to stand and give just a brief overview of our ordinances that governs the use of golf carts and where they can go, what roads they can be on. Also, some of the state laws that also govern us as to being able to pass these ordinances that allows them on town roads. I'm going to ask Mr. Holman if he would give this out. It's a packet so that everybody can read and kind of follow along with. Very first thing you're looking at is the town ordinance that governs golf carts and utility vehicles here on the mountain. I'm just going to briefly give a little synopsis as to what the ordinance entails. It mainly says right now that golf carts can go to and from their residence to the golf course and back. They're not to be used for other alternative means of transportation. It is just for golf purposes or club only. Also in that, they have to be inspected by the police department annually, and there is a fee for that. Once you kind of read through that a little bit, let me back up. There's also a list of roads that is attached to the ordinance. That is all the roads that is approved as least golf carts can be on. There are several roads, and like Mr. Holman said, up on the screen here in your package, there also is a map. All the highlighted roads that you see, those are the roads that they can be allowed on at the present time. And again, right now the way the ordinance is, it is to and from the golf course. I want to go back to the annual inspection. If you will go to the next piece of paper, which is behind the ordinance, you're going to see the golf cart inspection checklist.
Yes, okay.
It'll look like this one right here. Mr. Barnes, he's familiar with it. We inspect all of the clubs, golf carts that they use for maintenance on the golf course. You'll see at the top of there, the name of the owner, their address, phone number, and the inspection sticker number. We attach or affix one of these stickers to the golf cart. Most of them have either a half windshield or a whole plexiglass windshield, and we stick those on there, and that indicates that it has been inspected. Oh, there we go. So that is one of the visual aids that we have whenever we're on patrol and we pass the golf cart. We see that it has a sticker on it that's been inspected. The other thing that we have, well, let me finish out the inspection sticker first. Once you get past the inspection sticker number there, you see that we have the model year, the make, and the VIN number of the golf cart. Also proof of insurance. And this is liability insurance. If they're going to be out on the roads, they have to have liability insurance that covers them in case they are involved in an accident.
And that is separate from their homeowner's policy, correct?
It is separate from their homeowner's policy. In the past, a lot of people have asked if their homeowner's insurance covers it. No,
It can be added to your homeowners,
it can be added,
but it's an addendum to it.
but once you go out on the road, then you have to have liability insurance.
The insurance agent told me they had to have auto liability insurance.
That's the liability insurance I'm speaking of.
Auto liability
Yes.
insurance.
Yes. Yeah, if they're going to be on the roads.
Yeah.
After you see the make and the VIN, like I said, you've got the proof of insurance, the driver's license number. We have to have the registered owner's driver's license number on there. And in saying that, only a licensed driver can operate the golf carts while they're on the town roads. It can't be a learner's permit. It can't be a teenager or a child. It has to be a licensed driver, just as if you were driving your regular automobile.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Since you have one driver's license on here, if there's more than one driver in a home with one golf cart, do you not want all their driver's license numbers then?
Just the registered
Just the
owner.
registered,
Just the
okay.
registered owner. But if the golf cart is stopped, a licensed driver has to be operated. They have to be in control of
And
it.
have their license on them?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Past that, you'll see 2 operating headlights, 2 operating taillights, and a rearview mirror. Then down below that, you'll see whether it's approved or not. We'll check that. Also put the inspecting officer's name, date, and the owner's signature. Once we do this, we bring this back, we make a copy of it, and we also do a registration card. This is something we started last year, a couple of years ago. And in that, it has the exact same information here as what it does on this piece of paper. And we got away from the paper merely because golf carts being out in the weather, get caught out in the rain, it destroys the registration form. This is plastic, it's printed on there, laser print, it's good to go. So they have to have this and this. But you can leave this at home, as long as you've got this, you're still okay. But I'll pass this around so y'all can see it. That takes care of the inspection form. Does anybody else have any other questions about the inspection form?
You kept going?
Okay, if not, I want to hit just a little bit on the House bill that gave the town of Beach Mountain the authority to allow or govern as to whether or not golf carts can be up on town roads. And it's Session Law 2003-124, House Bill 295. You have a copy of that as well. I think this was also another time that Mr. Barnes was involved in this. You see there in Section 1, it says, notwithstanding the provisions of General Statute 2050 and GS 2054, the town of Beach Mountain may, by ordinance, regulate the operation of golf carts and utility vehicles on any public street or road within the town by ordinance. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this was first passed in 2003, and since then, as we go to the next page, you're going to see Session Law 2013-172, House Bill 140. You can read there in Section 1. There's a lot of other towns that are now following in our footsteps. And 4, you might be able to see, is there any other House bills other than, is that the most recent?
That's the most recent one.
That's
Yes,
the
sir.
most recent. Excuse me. Moving past that, the next thing you want to see is a guidance for golf carts. This has come straight out of North Carolina General Statutes. And again, it is just some more information for y'all to read over while you're conducting your business on the committee. And also attached to that again is the House bill, and it also gives the general statute number of 160A-300.6. That is the regulation of golf carts on streets, roads, and highways. That is what gives the municipalities the authority to do so, along with the House bill that I had aforementioned. And then the last thing I have, the last piece of paper that you have in your packet that I've given you, the top of it's going to be golf carts. This is the DMV, the North Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles regulations as to what they have to have if it is to be registered through North Carolina DMV and to be operated on state-maintained highways. But once a golf cart, if it meets all of these regulations here that they have set forth, it can be registered titled in the state of North Carolina and driven anywhere as long as it is in a 35 mile per hour or less zone. Other than that, folks, that's all I've got. But if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to give me a call. Does anybody have any questions now?
I have one on this. If this is, this last thing that said golf carts, and you said if they have this, they meet all this, they get a license plate, they are then no longer within what we're trying to do here.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I can give you a little bit of background on some of the legalities. You might have a question for the
Yeah,
chief.
the only other question, does the current ordinance still maintain the language that requires driving to and from the golf course
Yes.
for the purpose of playing golf?
Yes.
Because that phrase wasn't mentioned earlier. I just wanted to see if that was still there.
Yeah, it's still there.
And I'm happy to provide a little bit of history on this and also some of the legality items. My general role and philosophy on these things is, as far as whatever the policy decision is, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, that's up to you folks. I try to generally limit what I'll tell you as to whether you can do it or whether you can't do it, because it's your folks' job to make the recommendation on what makes a good policy decision. My job's on the legality as opposed to the policy side. So I try to be mindful of that as I go through this. So as far as a way of history with these things, in 2003, the town of Beech Mountain got a local bill passed, which essentially a local bill is something that allows the town to do something that is not generally allowed under the statutes. And that is the 2003 session law that Chief BArnet mentioned. There are other towns that have joined us in that, but that allows us to regulate golf carts and utility vehicles within the town limits and on town streets. So that gets back to the question, well, what is a town street? The short answer to that is a town street is any public street that is not the Beech Mountain Parkway. Beech Mountain Parkway is Highway 184, so that is a DOT road, and we don't have any jurisdiction over Highway 184. So for example, if we wanted to have a crosswalk installed here at Town Hall, Public Works can't just go out and paint a crosswalk on 184. You have to get the permission of the DOT from on high to give you permission to do that. So with that being said, other than Highway 184, the regulation of golf carts and utility vehicles on town roads are something that you can regulate and that's within your discretion and something that you can address. So that's And that is where the topic of Chapter 72 came up. And the vast majority of what's in Chapter 72 was originally adopted in 2003, and that's the form that it's carried forward from that date. There were some changes as to limitations on speeds of vehicle that were recently adopted, and also a list of roads where golf carts are allowed that was added by council last year. But otherwise, the regulations that you see in substance have been on the books since 2003 when the session law was originally passed by the town. Since that date, our authority to regulate golf carts has also been expanded under the general statute, the 168-300.9. So we have two different bases for our authority of what we can regulate. We still can't regulate on Beach Mountain Parkway and regulate that road.
Can I ask you a
Yes, ma'am.
question? It says on here they can operate on secondary highway. Is that a secondary highway coming through here?
No, this would be a secondary road is generally a town road. Anything that is
No, it said secondary highway or street, which is posted less than 35 miles an hour.
Where are you reading?
From the,
What is that?
it's the North Carolina Golf Cart and Low Speed.
I don't think that's her own handout. I don't have the handout on.
Okay, I'm not sure what that would be, but as far as
How about I bring that over to them?
sorry, thank you.
It's easier to look at. And the copies of it for you.
Thank you. I note that this looks like it's under general federal regulations for golf carts.
Well, it just says North Carolina Golf Cart on the front of it.
Right, but it says, I guess the paragraph above says general federal law for golf carts
It's,
for current National Highway Transportation Safety Administration interpretations and regulations to address. The long and the short of the answer to that is, since this has a state highway designation rather than a state road designation, so if you'll notice if you drive through Watauga or Avery,
well, I understand, you know, they
Right.
can't go on 321. That
Right.
is a major highway or,
right,
Yeah.
by anything with,
but it's 321, it's 184, it's just a little two-lane road.
but 184 still falls into the highway designation.
But is it a secondary highway?
No, a secondary highway would be SR and then have a number, would be a secondary road.
Okay. But
Those,
this wasn't, I didn't know
Right.
the difference.
sure, and those are designated, a secondary road has an SR and then a number for the state road system. Highway 184 is within the purview of DOT, and their rules are you must have a license or a tagged vehicle on those highways. And our session law and 168 300.6 don't let us address that road. So even though we have two bases of authority, we don't have that authority to proceed in our regulations. Other limitations that we have related to our regulations is however we classify things, they have to be applied across the board. For example, we can't have a regulation that says Tim Holloman's a super nice guy and I want him to be able to drive his golf cart where he wants, but Bill Smith, I don't like him or he's not responsible. We can't have something that regulates individual people. We also cannot distinguish based on whether it is a business or private that is operating it, and we also cannot distinguish on whether or not someone is a resident or a property owner or a voter. Those can't be our basis for our regulations. So whatever we set as the rules, they have to be applied across the board evenly. We can regulate where they go and what they are required to have as far as the substance and the standards, and also speeds and different items. One thing we have not done before is segregated out the difference between a golf cart and a utility vehicle. And for purposes of our discussion, it's probably helpful to refer back to what the general statutes refer to those vehicles as. And a golf cart is defined by statute as a vehicle designed and manufactured for operation on a golf course for sporting or recreational purposes that is not capable of exceeding speeds of 20 miles an hour. A utility vehicle has a definition of being a motor vehicle that is designed for off-road use and used for general maintenance, security, agricultural, or horticultural purposes. And a utility vehicle specifically does not include an all-terrain vehicle or an ATV, or a golf cart, or a riding lawnmower. So as far as our local bill for being able to regulate utility vehicles and golf carts, those are the definitions we need to use for where those can go. One item that you may want to consider for discussion is whether it's an electric vehicle or whether it's a motorized vehicle. You can certainly make those distinctions as part of your ordinance for where things are allowed to go and what things are allowed to do. One other point that I would mention, and I'm sorry for running on a little bit, is in making your adoption, I guess I have two more points. In deciding what to adopt, anything that is an objective standard is much easier for Chief BArnet and his officers to enforce. For example, if we have a list of roads where golf carts are allowed to travel, it's very easy for Chief BArnet to know this golf cart is either where it's supposed to be or where it's not supposed to be. The language that was brought up earlier of with the intent to go play golf or go to the golf course is very difficult for the chief to enforce, and quite frankly, I don't believe there's ever been a citation written on that basis, because the only way you're going to know that is if you ask someone, where are you going and what is your intent, and then truthfully tell you what they're doing or why they're doing it. So as far as things that are capable of enforcement versus things that are perhaps more aspirational, more objective standards are better. As far as the policy standards behind this, I believe that, I guess as a general framework, the discussion, a lot of it will deal with balancing the competing interest of convenience of being able to use your golf cart versus safety concerns. And within, how you balance those two competing interests is certainly and completely within your control. And I'll generally take notes and direction from you as to whatever you'd like to see drafted up. And if there's something that is problematic from a legal standpoint, I'll certainly bring that to your attention, but otherwise from a policy standpoint, that's why you guys get paid the big bucks.
We're still waiting.
I want my copy.
Just hold it.
I think you were at the council meeting when the council was most recently considering making some changes, when they asked me to talk about the first time we went through this process and tried to establish the old ordinance before it was amended. And the question from council that I didn't have an answer for is, why did our committee lump golf carts and utility vehicles into the same ordinance? So one consideration I think we ought to make is to attempt to separate those two and specifically talk about golf cars in one ordinance and utility vehicles in another, just so they're not lumped together. Because I think it would be easier for us to arrive at a recommendation if we don't have to also consider things that aren't golf carts. Because I think even the name of this committee is the Golf Cart Committee. And perhaps there should be another committee that works on utility vehicles. That's a suggestion.
Sure, and I think that's within the scope of your work here. And I think that's a valid point for consideration, that those two things can be different, and there may be different restrictions based on noise, based on function, based on utility or usefulness of those that you might want to consider.
I mean, you just defined the difference.
Right.
Right, correct, exactly. Yes, in the statute they are defined differently. And of course, I was not here in 2003.
Right.
I believe they were probably just lumped together because the statute at the time, or the local ordinance at the time, just said you have the authority to regulate golf carts and utility vehicles. And there was not as much of a differentiation as there is now between those two.
And back then, actually, I don't remember there being side-by-sides, and I know that was one of the reasons that this was brought up in the first place. But there was a lot of discussion at that time about four-wheelers and whether or not four-wheelers would be allowed to drive on the roads. And there were people that were in favor of that and wanted that to become part of the ordinance, but it wasn't eventually adopted that way. So I think that was the only way I could answer that question.
And I think statutorily, ATVs are in their own category, and our ordinance, or our local bill and session law doesn't let us give that authority for ATVs to be on the road. And I don't believe ATVs are otherwise allowed to be on the road, generally speaking.
Right.
Question. I've seen Fred's and
May I remind everyone to talk into the microphone as you have a person on the phone, so that might be clearer for them to follow. Thank you.
Tim, are you picking me up okay, or do I need to be louder?
No, maybe it's just fine.
I'll move this closer.
I've noticed Fred's, some other businesses in the town have vehicles that look like golf carts. Are those actually the utility vehicles?
The short answer is it depends. I've not seen them, so it depends upon where they meet on this definition and what they actually look like. That might be a practical interpretation question for Chief BArnet, and since he's probably seen these vehicles, he could give a better educated statement.
Mr. Fred Foles' vehicle, it falls under golf cart.
Okay.
The town also has a UTV, is that correct?
Yes, the town does have a UTV, and it is used for governmental use, town use, and that one is exempt.
Okay.
Is that the fire department?
The town.
So get in places that cars can't get,
Yes, the
understand.
recreation department, yes.
And the fire department has,
Yes, the fire department has a four-wheeler. And it, again, is exempt because it is used for emergency services.
And there are golf carts in my neighborhood that are not used for golf whatsoever, ever. Some of them have 3 sets of seats in them. I've seen those, but they're golf carts. I mean, I don't care what you call it, they're a golf cart. So it depends on, and I know they go faster than a lot of golf carts. I mean, there's a gentleman that owns a golf course in New Jersey that he uses little Hummer golf carts, and those things go 40 miles per hour.
If we follow the definition from the general statute, it's limited to 20 miles an hour to be defined as a golf cart.
There, you go 19 miles an hour, yeah. Golf carts can only go 20 miles.
Now,
Unless they have.
So our distinction then would be to take, golf cart is the thing that we're really looking at right now. We are the golf cart committee, and Brian's right, then we can give off, if UTV or ATV or whatever we want to call it, eventually that has to be looked at probably differently or separately.
I think that's within your prerogative, because Chapter 72 just lumps them all together currently, and if we're going to break one part out, a recommendation as to the other part would probably be advisable as to how you do that. The one item I did not mention earlier, I believe it's an EasyGo 35, is that?
EasyGo 25.
EasyGo 25, that actually meets all the requirements of a motor vehicle for getting tagged in North Carolina. So although that looks like a golf cart, because it's capable of being tagged, it can be driven anywhere in North Carolina. I could drive it back to my office in Boone if I wanted to, because it meets the requirements for a North Carolina motor vehicle for use on the highways and other places.
there are a number of them in operation in Blowing Rock. Jack Triola at Mountain Top Golf Cars in Fosco told me the distinction between EasyGo manufactures golf carts and they manufacture the 2.5, and they look very similar, but in order to be licensable, it has to also have a VIN number. And so you can't convert a golf cart to a licensable vehicle because, like, Jack could do everything he needed to do, except he doesn't have the authority to put a VIN number on the car. So he's had folks ask him from various communities to convert their golf cart to a low-speed electric vehicle so that they could comply and be used and licensed by the state, and he doesn't have that authority. So you have to spend the $10,000 to $12,000 for the 2.5 in order to be able to do that, or unless you buy a used one.
Right, and I'm not an expert on what goes into making of a roadworthy motor vehicle, but I also believe it has something to do with impact ratings and things like that, that a standard golf cart doesn't necessarily have.
Correct.
There aren't any here?
There are some 2.5s on the mountain.
There are.
Are they on the golf course too?
There's some that drive to the golf course. They can be used to play golf, and they can have a bag attachment, a rear-facing seat on them. Every seat has to have a seat belt. The windshield's fixed. They're not comfortable to play golf out of because of that fixed slanted windshield. It's hard to get in and out of the cart, and we require that they turn the speed down. And there's a speed adjustment on the 2.5, so if they're going to use it on the golf course, they can't drive it at 25 miles an hour. Golf course cart paths can't handle that, so we require them to turn it down.
When you say they have to have, the 2.5s have to have a VIN number, or the ones that are street legal, but yet on our Beach Mountain has a VIN number on that
It's actually,
registration?
it should
It's
say.
a serial number?
It
or-
should say serial number.
I think that clarification probably has to come up, because otherwise we're going to get that.
Being in law enforcement, we deal with all the different vehicles that we deal with. We just use VIN number because that is the norm that we use. So that's why we have it as VIN on our inspection. As Brian had said, each golf cart has a serial number.
Gotcha.
Just like your TV, VCR, or refrigerator.
Thank you.
If you're running for stolen property, for lack of a better term, through the state and national database, is that serial number, you just enter that where you would enter a VIN number?
Mhm.
So that, for example, if you find an abandoned golf cart, you could run it through that and determine if it's been stolen?
Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Chairman, if I may just ask a question. At this point, there's about 20 minutes left. I don't know if you want to continue with informational fact-finding, or if you want to ask your board members, do they want to throw out ideas for maybe come back with a draft ordinance next time, or just how you want to go from this point. I'm not trying to rush you. If you want to continue informational, that's fine, but if you wanted to come back something next time, maybe you should consider that in the next few minutes.
We don't have a copy of the current ordinance in front of us. We just have the amendment listing the roads.
That's right, we don't have, we didn't.
So we don't have an ordinance we can even go through line item by line
You
item.
do have it in the packet Mr. Barnett gave to you.
That is the whole ordinance, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a bunch of whereases and it adds the roads, right?
It may not.
You might be,
It was just the ordinance amendment, it wasn't an entire ordinance, I don't think.
I can.
I think this is just the amendment, if I'm not mistaken.
We've not yet codified the changes to chapter 72, but we can,
It's ordinance to amend, it says it right in front,
Yeah.
so,
right,
sure.
we can give you the copy of what goes with that. This would be the 2003 ordinance that goes with
Yeah.
this.
I think for our next meeting,
Or just.
it'd be helpful if we had that, so we could, before,
Okay.
if you could email it out to everyone
That
or
would be
whatever, so that we can print it in red line and,
The attorney has it right there, I'll make copies because I have one member who's not on email, so I'll do that right now.
we
Thank you,
have
Tamara.
3 members that aren't here though.
We can still
And then
email
we'll
it.
we'll do
Okay.
both ways.
Just going to hand one out to her.
So my understanding is the ones that are the 25s can go on the golf course if they reduce their speed, but they can also go on the streets,
Yeah.
anywhere, any street.
Right, we don't have control over those, so just treat those as cars that are allowed to go on golf courses.
And Mr. Connolly, for example, has one, drives it to the golf course, but doesn't use it on the course. And he doesn't even maintain a tag on it any longer because he lives on the golf course, so he doesn't have a reason to drive it.
They can only go up to 25?
Correct, by that definition. There's a category under the statute for a low-speed vehicle. It's still a vehicle, but it's the only place they're not allowed. I know they're not allowed on interstates, or I believe it's maybe restricted access highways. Those are the ones you think of as real highways, as opposed to, 184. It's, usually like the 4-lane roads, Highway 421 to Wilkesboro, those kind of things, where it wouldn't be allowed. But for our purposes, it's a motor vehicle.
The 2.5 is a relatively new version of a vehicle. When we first were looking at this ordinance, some of our members had carts made by Bombardier and Gemcar. There were two other manufacturers that were manufacturing licensable, roadworthy vehicles because they lived not on the golf course. And until the ordinance, until the statute was passed, that's the only way they could drive their cart from their home to the course. So,
What kind of enforcement is there? Do the police ever question anybody, or they just assume they're going to the golf course?
That's a good question.
Most of the time when we see the golf carts, like I said, we see the sticker that is on the windshield, and that's our visual indicator as we're passing, or if they pass us, as to allow us to know whether or not it's been registered. As far as any citations that have been issued, there hasn't been any in the past couple of 3 years. Accidents, no accidents while being on any of the town roads. The accidents that we have had has been on personal property or on the golf course.
As far as the police department stopping golf carts, and I know that Chief BArnet's aware of this, they are not allowed to just stop a golf cart just because they want to stop a golf cart. The Fifth Amendment protections from search and seizure do apply if they're going to pull up behind a golf cart and activate their blue lights. So to stop the golf cart, they have to have some reasonable suspicion that there is a violation of the ordinance or state law that would justify them to stop that golf cart and seize the occupant to ask them further investigation questions.
How many more roads or streets are going to be opened up that haven't been in the past? I know in the past there was a limited number of people that could drive their golf carts, not everybody in the whole town. I mean, it was limited to your distance from your house to the golf course.
Right.
I understand.
Harry, I was just going to answer that one. That's what this committee is going to discuss. What should be changed? Should anything be changed or addition? Staff is not recommending one way or the other. We're just here telling you what we currently
Are
have.
all these roads now new added to the?
They're currently, you can travel those with a golf cart that goes to and from the golf course.
The 2003 ordinance allowed the operation of golf carts on any town road, other than, of course, Beach Mountain Parkway. The 2017 amendment added a restriction as to only certain roads. So as to whether that list is too broad, too narrow, or whether the 2003 approach was the better approach, that's a policy question for you folks in town council.
Let me ask you this question, and it's come up in chatter. What is the legality if we as a committee make a decision that we're going to name X roads, whatever, golf carts are okay, that people say, well, I want to ride, I have a golf cart or I have a UTV, but it's the same, it looks just like your golf cart, but it's a very close, some of them are close to the description. They say legally they're going to come after the town or the, whatever. Are we able to just do a golf cart committee that's a four-wheel vehicle and not include these other vehicles in that? Because some people are thinking they're the same thing.
Well, definitionally, both of them are currently required to be inspected and certified. If you separate out a golf cart versus a UTV, when those vehicles are registered with the police department, they will make a determination as to which definition meets that vehicle and how that vehicle would be regulated. As far as our legal authority, I feel comfortable that what has currently been adopted is within our authority. And as long as we stay within the parameters of both the general statute that allows us to regulate these, as well as our additional local bill that gives us additional authority to regulate these, I don't see any liability for the town. Now, anybody can file a lawsuit over anything for any reason. That doesn't necessarily mean there's merit to it. But generally speaking, as long as we stay within those rules and regulations, and if I believe we're headed in a direction that's not lawful, I'll certainly try and redirect us back on task. But as far as what you're doing here, I don't see any liability for the town based upon what they've done so far or where we're going. Likewise, there's no individual liability for committee service or council service working for the local government. So I wouldn't be worried that you individually would be liable for any recommendations that you make.
I think one point you brought up that we ought to really consider is electric versus motorized, because an electric vehicle is going to be limited in the amount of time it can operate and the amount it can travel before it needs to be recharged. The 10 miles might be kind of an outside limit for an electric vehicle or an electric golf cart. So I think we ought to really think about that, because the motorized golf cart can also be modified to go faster. It can travel 100 miles before it runs out of gas, and
they're noisy.
And they're loud. And so in keeping with the natural settings of the mountain, one thing we ought to, I think, consider is the limiting to electric golf carts.
I agree with that.
Whatever we do.
That's one of the biggest issues, is keeping with our community as a
Exactly.
resort community, and nobody wants that noise if you don't have to have it.
I think we just, Chief will need to understand that electric vehicles can be modified to go faster as well. And part of your inspection process might be to figure out whether it has an AC motor in it, because if it does, then it goes 40 miles an hour.
Right.
And that's what all the NASCAR guys do, because they've got to travel long distances. But I don't think we need those up here, and those are a problem on the golf course too. I mean, I think the roads, without the other traffic, the roads are safer to drive on with the golf cart than the golf cart paths are. I mean, we have places we restrict carts on the golf course because of the curves and the hills.
With that being said about the golf carts being able to go faster than what we have allowed in the ordinance, they would still fall under our speed limit regulations as well.
Right.
And we'd be able to do speed enforcement upon doing that. They could be written a speeding citation.
Good.
And if they're in a golf cart and they get caught speeding, it goes on their driver's license as if they were driving a regular vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay.
So because it's limited to only going to the golf course now, then in the winter, they're not allowed on the roads at all?
No.
Right? When the club is closed, they're not
That's
allowed
not
at all?
That would be correct. According to the current ordinance that we have, is for playing golf only. For the
It doesn't
purpose of playing
specifically
golf.
state that. In theory, if they're playing golf in January, you could, but I think that point is well taken. That could very well be your reasonable suspicion.
Yeah.
Would you not think it should be written that way, as opposed to when the golf course is open?
Well,
You
that's
know.
a policy decision for you folks, whether to continue to restrict it for golfing purposes or to allow it for a more general use. That is a
That's one of
policy.
the reasons I was interested in this, because the heavy fog we've had lately, and coming up upon deer or other slow things around a sharp curve, it's frightening to think of what would happen to a golf cart.
Not only that, they have no brake lights, so you
Yeah.
can see that they would even stop.
Well,
Or not warn.
So if it has two operating taillights,
But the tail lights are not brake lights.
they're not brake lights.
No.
If they are tail lights, they do function as brake lights. Whenever
Well,
you mash the brake on the golf cart, it illuminates brighter.
It
So
does.
they do function as
So,
brake lights.
but this golf cart inspection list says you must have 2 operating taillights, so maybe we have a tail?
Well,
Brake
I don't know on the car,
They-
when you're,
they
when you
do.
hit the
They do.
brakes, the light comes on.
They do.
But if they don't have their lights on, do the brake lights come on if they don't have their headlights on?
Yes.
Because,
Yes. They operate just the same as any other motor vehicle.
well,
If
if
you
you
hit-
drive in your car and you don't have your lights on, but you hit your brake, you hit your brakes, the brake
Still a light,
lights come on.
that's
Yes.
But the tail lights are not on
Right.
normally if you
Right.
don't have your
The
headlights.
golf cart works the same way. If you hit the brake, the brake lights come on,
But the taillights are not on.
but the taillights are not on.
Just like the brake in your car. It's going to brake. It's a brake light.
So is there anything in the ordinance
Maybe.
about operating
Well,
hours? Like,
How would you know
if it's
if
at 8 o'clock
the-
at night, you're not
if
going
the
to the golf
taillights are
course.
on? If
Because
your
it gets
lights-
brighter.
They're
They
not
just said it gets,
currently.
it illuminates a little more.
It gets brighter.
You could go on these listed roads to your friend's house for
Can
dinner,
we have a horn? Can they have
But
a
see,
horn on?
the golf course
but
is
the
not
golf
open
course
at
wouldn't be
night.
open.
The golf course is not open at night.
Right, so is
Well,
that the same
but
as in the winter?
that's one of the considerations, does this committee want to recommend certain things? But I'm just, Madam Chairman, I'm just trying to act as a facilitator. You've got about 3 minutes left. What I gather right now, just for the board, Ms. Chairman, is that we want to make sure everybody has a copy of the current ordinance, the amended ordinance. Look over that before the next time. We're not expecting Ford to come back with anything drafted for the second meeting at this point. But what I would like to suggest is, we'll make sure everybody has, we'll email this out and scan it again. So those of you here who have it, we'll send it to those who are operating remotely. We do have some suggestions already that have been emailed out. We'll scan that document in again, and we just ask next time, we won't have any introductory material unless this committee emails me questions ahead of time they won't answer. The plan is to go through the ordinance amended, and everybody bring their suggestions on what they would like changed. You transition really well here. If you're going to open up, these roads are open just for golf cart I'm not saying to do it, I'm just giving an example. If you open the current roads to all traffic, if they're not time traffic, is whatever, those ideas we can have next time, because hopefully, after the next meeting, for the third meeting can bring back a draft that you can look at for any
I
Oh,
proposed
think that's a
change.
good idea. I think we all should look at this over as committee, including people that are not here, and make notes on it so that we can be ready to open discussion on where we need to go with it, step by
And
step.
I like the way everybody, I don't think, as long as they respond, they're not well, you have to be careful about open meetings law, but this is ad hoc, so it's not really as worried. So if you respond all,
That's fine.
we're not, because you're a recommending body, so you don't have to worry about that. So we're good to go, so you can go back and forth as much as you want, and,
Whatever there's a consensus for at the next meeting's what I'll put together. So if, it's hard to work for 7 folks, all of which may have a different direction. So what I'll try to do is wherever it appears there's a consensus to try and put that together into that draft. So if you folks will work on some of that language for our next meeting, after that, I'll come back to you with a draft and you can tell me, yes, I like this, or no, you completely misunderstood me and this is not what I want. So whatever you folks want to do.
And what is the date of the next meeting, March?
27.
2 weeks.
Mr. Chamberlain, your suggestion, I'm understanding. I think one thing we could consider is that we require the carts to turn the lights on. And if their lights are on, then the tail lights are on.
Really good
Okay.
thing,
So
absolutely.
think about that.
Yeah.
Can we make the lights become running lights?
You just turn on the headlights
Just
and
turn
the
them
tail
on.
lights are on.
Just pull out some.
I move we adjourn because of the.
we have to, I know, they have to go.
Thank you, Dr. Berg.
Yay, good.
Thank you, Dr. Berg.
Thank you as well.
See you next time, or hear you next time.
Very good suggestion.
And I don't think we have a meeting pushing this next time, but I think y'all got to a
we're here
good
for
point
now.
today anyway, so that's,
No, I thought
Here's your pen.
we needed to understand the past.
No, that helped me, because understanding just the
know where we're
difference
going
between the two vehicles. I can tell you.
you
I
take
don't-
your packet stuff with you. help
Hey,
me
Wendell,
get
go away. What are you doing in here?
Thank you.